Hey guys, welcome back to the Fixed Drift Coupe channel. It's Chris here. It's a nice cold one here in New England. As you can see, I got stuff all over the place. So hopefully today we can get some good footage for you, get some content, and get some stuff done to this 2017. Let's go. First and foremost is, if you're following this build, thank you very much. If you're following my channel from when I was starting with this car, or if you followed my channel from when I started with the Corvette content, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you. I'm almost to 1,500 subscribers. I'd like to get to 2,000, hopefully in the next, 5-6 months. I don't know, maybe I gotta get better content. But if you follow me on this car, thank you very, very much. If you do like these kind of cars and you're working on one of these yourself, I'm gonna put a link in my description to a YouTube channel called the Black Bomber Garage. It's a guy, I should say, named Ben. We kind of started chatting on social media and stuff about these kind of cars. So his channel's pretty cool. He does a lot of, traditional stuff on this, like swapping over to V8s and doing cross members and stuff for transmissions and how to install rear ends. Basically, like just basic DIY stuff for guys that are getting into it and stuff. So check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description below. On today's agenda is I want to get this thing tacked in place. Well, on this episode's agenda, I should say, because I've been up since yesterday, and I don't know how much energy I'm going to have left. Even though I just crushed the 5-hour energy, and I'm like, I can see sounds right now. This 10 rear here, it's not fully set up centered, but we put the body half-ass on here, and the center of the rear end has to be here, and then I'm going to square the rear end to the frame. I was supposed to get a foam motor and transmission from a friend. So I hit him up and I'm like, hey, I'm ready for that motor. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, the motor's for an LS, it's not a small block Chevy. So then I was like, oh crap. So once I put small block Chevy engine mounts to mount up to that cross member, and then adapter plates, it's definitely gonna lift the LS block up a little bit, and it might be at a different angle on the front part of the motor to where the transmission is gonna be pitched possibly different than what I have when I actually put the 350 in there. So I decided not to go that route. A friend of mine named Mike was cleaning out his garage and said, hey, I got a 350 that, I spun a bearing or whatever back in the day, and I got to get rid of all this crap. Do you want a bare block? And I said, yes, I do. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to take this cherry picker, which isn't Travis's, by the way, because Travis just took his back when I needed it. Thanks, Trav. This is going to be you. Take the cherry picker, we're gonna get the motor off the motor stand, and I went and got some hardware. I got some bell housing bolts, and I got a transmission mount here for the Saginaw, as well as engine mounts there for the 350. The plan is, get this thing hooked up, get the bell housing and the transmission bolted to the block, and get the block set in place so I can kind of have some sort of idea on where this pinion angle is going to be. The guys from Speedway, like I mentioned in the other video, said this is pitched, he thought, from 4 to 6 degrees down. So with a mount on there and the motor mounts, I want to get the ballpark so I can put this in the ballpark of where it's going to be. Because if you know radius rods, hang on, that they are adjustable as far as being able to adjust the pinion angle and how the rear end sits. I also noticed that this rear end is offset. It's not centered. I believe it's from either a extended cab S10 that had 2 U-joints that made up for the offset / vibration. But this drivetrain, the engine, and the center line of the crank and transmission output is actually centered in this frame. I read that the working angle of a U-joint, universal joint, you can be up to 2.5 inches off center, and that's like really pushing it to its limit. So I'm hoping that this isn't that bad. I think I read that the S10's around 15/16 off-centered, but it's the same thing as kind of your pinion angle. If you can follow me, my understanding of pinion angles, this is my understanding. I think it's right. From what I've read, it's right. Like I said earlier in these videos, I am not a professional. I just do this as a hobby. And I'm learning as I go. If my transmission is pointed down towards the ground, so the angle coming out of the yoke of the drive shaft is, let's say, 3 degrees pointed down this way from the front of the car to the back. If you're looking at the rear ends in the same direction, this way, you're going to go on the top of it, and you want that same angle down. So if you were looking forward on the car, the rear end pinion is going to be pointed up. So those angles run parallel to each other, so they cancel each other out, or close enough. I believe it's within 1 to 2 degrees, and you shouldn't have any vibrations, and they should be in operating angles, I should say, of the universal joint. Now, this being an offset rear end, I believe the same is going to apply for the offset. So as long as the transmission and motor center line is straight 90 degrees perpendicular with the frame, even though the rear end is offset, you want it the same perpendicular squareness with the frame. That way, the drive shaft in a straight line is essentially like if you're looking at the car sideways, they're running in parallel angles. I believe that's correct. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I got from it when I was reading on this last night. I couldn't find a whole ton about these companion flanges. I think that's what they're called. But I believe the S10 is somewhere around an inch offset. And I believe, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier because I did a bunch of takes on this, I think you can go up to 2.5 inches offset is like the max of a U-joint. So we're going to get it close. I want to get this thing kind of welded in and stuff. So hopefully, we can get to that point. With that being said, let's get the 51 moved back a little bit. Let's get this cherry picker opened up. Let's get this block off the engine stand. And let's see if we can get this engine mounted in this frame. I'm actually going to leave the frame right there because I ran the level right now. The frame's dead nuts level, and left to right, it's dead even as well. This part of the garage is actually flat. So as much as it's crammed over there, I'm going to try to get the rear end at least tacked in place where it is because, like I said, it's pretty flat here, so I don't want to move it. Let's go. All right, so that wasn't too bad. Luckily, I have these bolts left over from my Pontiac that I built when I was in high school, or just after high school. I chased all the threads again on the bell housing. I rethreaded everything, same thing with the tail shaft. So all those bolts went on nice and easily. I didn't do anything with those, but if those cross thread on the block, whatever, we'll fix those out. But let's get this bad guy on this frame to see where that pinion angle is going to go. So obviously I can't get this in here, as you can see in this time lapse, because either that hits the cross member or that hits the radius rod, and I can't get it to slide in this way. And the same thing's going to happen if I try to come in this way. I have the front end supporting the front weight. The only thing I could do is put jack stands underneath here to support it, pull the radius rod out, put it in, and hook it up. This is actually probably going to be a pain in the ass to pull a motor in and out of without having those legs go underneath the car since it's so low. I'm going to have to figure out some way to get the engine out, in and out. Okay, so got it in place, and who would have thought these nice 1/2 bolts that actually fit through here don't fit through the engine mount. So that's kind of stupid. I wonder if they got to be metric, whatever. So I put screwdrivers in there for now. It's going to be close enough. I'm going to throw some bolts underneath, at least 1 or 2 underneath that tranny to get it kind of where it's going to be. And then I got to put the radius rod back on after I pull this out. Of course, I mean, I'm not going to get mad. The holes don't fully line up. This cross member's forward a little bit, and the engine block is as far forward as it'll go. I'm wondering if I should grind a little bit off that, but then that'll make it smaller and have to be crushed with the bolt. I'm thinking I probably should just auger these holes open, get them open a little bit bigger. Just run some big washers. I don't know, figure it out. So instead of doing anything else, I augered out the holes on that to kind of give this a little bit of play in there. So hopefully, I don't want to have to auger out those because I want it nice and tight on that cross member. So hopefully I can get this in there and get the bolts tight, nice and snug, and get this thing in here for good for now, temporarily. Put the radius rod back on and get my this goddamn pinion angle figured out. Radius rod hooked back up. Motor temporarily in place. Hand tight, screwdrivers. Good enough. Rear end supporting its weight. Now figure out what this pinion angle is on this transmission. The only downfall is I don't have a yoke for the tranny, so we're literally gonna have to put the angle finder on the tail shaft. So with that being where it was, we're looking at about 2.5. See if I can steady my phone. Like, depends on if you go a little bit, but right around 2 degrees downward, which is awesome. On that pinion angle, at 1 to 2 degrees this way, in theory, that should be good. I mean, I could even put it at 0, and if it stayed at 0, it would be good because you got to be within 2 degrees or parallel with each other. So that should be good. The only thing I have to do is I don't have that flange for this. So if you were to take the flange, right, and you were to bolt it to this, essentially you'd have your U-bolts, your joints would go here, right? So essentially, they're going to be at 90 degrees with this. So if I run a square, in theory on this, just run a speed square and put this angle finder on top and figure out, I guess I could even just put this on here like that and see where we're at. So we're way up there, obviously. So we got to go down, we're almost 10 degrees out, so 8. So we got to go down like 6 degrees and almost zap that where it is. The only thing I need to figure out is, I believe, ride height. Get this out a little bit. Ride height will adjust this, because if the frame goes up, in theory, that's going to go up as well. And if I raise the frame up with the suspension, the rear end is going to rotate on the Heim joint. So the rear is going to stay where it is, essentially, with the radius rods, because where they weld to here, they prevent the rear end from rolling. So I'm thinking, get the kind of springs with the mounts kind of where they're going to be, and figure out where the cross member is going to be. Maybe mock something up and tack it in place so I can kind of have a general idea of where that's going to be. And then square up the rear ends and mount those radius rods, and then make, you know, the points here as well. But that's my next step. I'm going to take a quick break. Rear end up a little bit. Well, not the rear end, but the rear of the frame up a little bit to see if the pinion angle changes here. And by jacking it up probably like an inch, 2 inches, give or take, 1.5 inches, 2, the pinion angle changed by about 0.5 degree, which is awesome. So it's still about 2 degrees downward. So I'm going to shoot to have this at about 1 degree upward. That way I'm within 1. I have to make some sort of cross member here to have my rear shocks mount. And with these Harley shocks, they are a little tall. I didn't get adjustable coils. These are kind of just set the way they are. So what I think I'm going to do, this is going to come back quite a bit, is just make a cross member that goes straight across. And these are adjustable height-wise. up and down. I put them halfway so I can go up about 2 inches or down about 2 inches. Actually, probably down like 3 inches. These are a 3-inch axle, so I'm gonna have to make them work, which we will. I'm trying to get this centered here. So I'm gonna try to shoot to have this kind of around ride height, and then get the pinion angle to where it's, 1 degree up, or if I can hit exactly 2, that'd be awesome. So let's get these radius rods together. These are Ron Pope Motorsports RPM. I believe they are from Tennessee. Actually, right here. RPM, Ron Pope Motorsports. Yep, Tennessee. I believe that they're made there. They look like they're made there. Chromoly steel. I like these radius rods more than I like those radius rods, but Speedway doesn't really sell those. These are made in the US. Those are probably made in China. I said on one of the previous videos, I believe these are made to go this way. Everyone I see is always like that. I have seen them go this way. So, we're gonna get these together and see if I can finagle them to somehow mount this way, just because I think it looks a lot cleaner hooked up like that with this tucked underneath the body. That's my opinion. I don't think it's gonna really make a difference for a 1,100-pound car. But I'm gonna get these matched in, get some anti-seize in these, get the Heims in there, and get the clevis joints. Clevis, that's the name of them. Get these in there, the lock nuts. So Ron Pope did drop the ball on the clevis joints. See these jam nuts? These are from Speedway. I had ordered a bunch of Heim joints up there. And we're gonna take these back off because I only have 2 right-hand threads. Looked on O'Reilly's and they had a box of 8 Dorman 5/8 by 18 right-hand thread nuts. So I go up to the guy on the counter, I'm like, hey, can you get me this, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, we don't have any of those. I'm like, actually, yeah, you do. Oh, yeah, we do. Like, what, do you want me to just start working there? Radius rods are put together. It kills me that this thing's not centered and squared because that's at 2 degrees up and that's at 2 degrees down. It's literally perfect right now. But we'll get to that when we get to it. I'm gonna clean this rear end up. It's got a bunch of brackets on it. We're gonna call it a night for tonight. But I got a bunch of brackets that we're welding on here, so we're gonna grind these off, get this whole section here nice and clean, bare metal. And I'm gonna start doing some measuring to see the distance between the frame. I kind of measured already here and here. They're squared off from the edges, where the rear end is kind of gonna be. So then I'm gonna do the width of that, and then I'm gonna add like 1.5 inches on each side. That gives me roughly enough to, actually almost 2 inches, to taper it so it has a center, and then it also fits in the back of the body there. So it's like 28.5 across. So if we do 4 inches, so it'll be 32.5. And I think this is a 46.25 between backing plate to backing plate. It's very tight on there. The backing plate is literally got like 1.5 inches before it hits the body. So I'm definitely gonna have to run skinnier tires in the back, which is totally fine with me. I wanna go skinnier and taller. Same thing with the front as I'm seeing this now. I got about 4 inches of clearance, roughly estimated. About 4.5 inches of clearance. I mean, the oil pan pickup right there, that's 4 3/4 high. And I mean, it probably sits a 1/2 inch or so above the bottom of the pan, so. I think we're gonna run the taller tire on the front and the back. But we'll cross that road, cross that bridge when we get there. Back at it on another day. I had to stop doing what I was doing yesterday because, well, you know how it is. Married with a wife, gotta make sure she's happy. So today's a day that I could get some time to work on these stuff. So we're gonna get this out. We're gonna get that fired up. My brother's coming over. He wants to paint a couple things, but let's get to it. rust, baby. Woo! So I did a bunch of measuring from back end plate to back end plate on this S10 rear. It's 47 1/4. Where it's gonna sit on the frame here, where this line is, and that line is roughly 28 1/2 from outside to outside. So with the radius rods, what I did was, as I measured, I am gonna run them down this way. That's how Ron Pope's place recommends to do it, so I'm gonna go with it. I figure to hold 2 inches out on this side, give me a little bit room to have some movement, obviously left and right. I hope the car's not moving left and right that much. I might even do a little bit more. Inside the car, if I remember correctly, I have about 37 inches between all of the cross braces, which obviously all that can be changed as I channel the car. I was thinking 2 inches over this way. I was originally gonna do 1 1/2, but 2 inches over. Now I'm wondering how much the rear end's gonna move with compression. If I should do it like 2 1/2, that gives me 5 inches on top of the 28 1/2, which would be 33 1/2, which still gives me plenty of room inside there. And then it'll also, actually, you know what I might do? You know what actually is a pretty good idea? Probably wouldn't be a bad idea if I mimicked where those radius rods go. That way, the ass end and the front are on the same tilt for the center of, yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get a measurement on that real quick. Disregard, that's 32 inches, so where those ears are is actually skinnier than the rear there. Maybe what I'll do is I'll measure the front. I'll do that actually. So this is, I think it's 23 1/2-ish, somewhere around there. Yeah. Where's it mount back here though? I'm not gonna be able to tell with the motor in there. I guess I can do plate to plate. Roughly right about there. So like 26 inches right there. It's actually 24 and like 7/8. So maybe I'll go the distance between where it mounts there to there and figure out what that angle is. So actually, let's just measure it that way. Learning as I go, see? So roughly 3 inches from the welding point, probably 3 3/4. So maybe I'll add 3 3/4 on each side then. We'll do that. So 28 1/2 plus 3 3/4 and 3 3/4 on each side. So that we'll call it 3 3/4, call it 4. So 8. 28 1/2 and 8 is 36 inches and minus the 1/2 inch for the corner. So 35 1/2, which will still give me plenty of room inside there. And you gotta remember too, this is coming at a triangle. So we're gonna measure that up. What I figure is I already have my width of the rear ends. So I'm gonna mark centered on each part that I showed in the time lapse of me grinding and cleaning up where the brackets are gonna go. And then we'll tack weld those once they're back in with the tire at ride height to where the frame is roughly gonna be. That way I can have my pinion angle around the same. And then if you watch the first part, I actually clamped these brackets here to the frame. So I'm gonna do the same thing with the fronts. So I'll get the backs tacked on where the rear end's centered and where it's gonna roughly be. We'll run a string line, square it up with the back end of the frame, because this frame is pretty square. Square it up there so the axle is the same length, and then I'll measure some wheelbases. We'll do an X pattern, and then we'll weld the fronts in solid, tack them at least, so I can get this thing rolling. And if I have to cut those out and re-weld them, that's fine. But also, it's got the heim joints on the front, which are adjustable to where I can tweak the rear end to get it square in the car. I'm sneezing like a mother because of all this. Look at this. Look at all this rust dust. My brother just painted his tip up with some high vis down, a little test over here, and hopefully it's all dried up and we're not getting, yeah, it's good, it's dry. I'm not getting dust in it, but it's good to go. So yeah, let's do a little bit more measuring. Tires are back on. I got the rear end marked where the brackets are gonna go. 7 3/8 from the back end plate over. Probably gonna run them to the outside of it just to give me a little bit more room. That way I have some sort of center line, right, to weld to. I'm going to get this kind of lowered down to where it's going to be. Set the pinion angle at ride height with the tires. I'm only going to tack weld these brackets in. And then I'm going to get the frame back up to where it's going to sit. And then tack weld the front mounts of the radius rods after I square them up to the frame. And hopefully we got some general idea of where these things are going to go. If not, fuck me. I don't know. With tires, my pinion angle is 2 degrees up. When I had the frame set up to where ride height was going to be, we had a 2 degree down from the tranny. So the rear end was 2 degrees up. They're on an even parallel. They zero each other out. That's what we're looking for. You can be off within a degree or so when you get ride height. But obviously that's why radius rods are adjustable. So, left to right, I have this thing squared, pretty much centered in this rear end, or centered in the frame. Like I wanted, I got about 2 inches on that side, and I got about my 2 inches on that side, depending on what angle you look at, but roughly about the same. They might be off with a 32nd or a 16th, but they're pretty damn close. As far as this way, I had to do some quick measuring. I'm going to actually set a line up behind here to measure the rear end from the back frame, because like I said, this frame is square. So we're roughly going to go off of here. We're going to measure from the rear end to the string line from there to there. And we'll see if the rear end's square and where it is. All right, so pinion angle's roughly 2 degrees, maybe like 2 1/4 up, which will level itself out once everything goes down. I have this line back here, roughly 1 inch back from the frame. Center to center, same wheelbase. From the 1 inch from the frame, I got 18 inches exactly to this back portion here. So I put a straight speed finder, or a speed angle finder, or a speed square down, and measure from that all the way back to this line, 18 inches. Same thing, put the speed square down here, measure from the back, measure back to this line, 18 inches. I got 2 inches from the frame to this line here, 2 inches from the frame and there. I was going to make it 7 3/8. I made it 7 1/8, basically. My speed square exactly is where that line is. I measured from the top here. It's tough because it's rounded. But from here to here, like 9 1/8 strong-ish with the rounds. Same thing for this side. So as far as left to right, where we need to be, I have my pinion angle. I measured this. It's square this way. The wheelbase is the same on each side. As far as I'm concerned, I squared that up. So I'm going to send it. Hopefully the car doesn't go dog tracking down the road, but like I said, everything's adjustable, so I can make it, obviously adjust it as I go. But I just want to get these radius rods where they need to be as far as on the rear end, and then clamp them to the bottom of the frame and have a general idea. As long as I get them tacked to the rear end with that roughly that pinion angle, obviously it's adjustable, then I can get the rear end up at ride height, put my cross member in. Once the cross member's in where the shocks are kind of tack welded to the rear ends, I kind of have my ride height, then I'll re-square the ass end up again and then tack these in place. That way I kind of have the rear end where it's going to be. Roughly where they need to go, kind of undetermined on how I'm going to square them off. I think I actually might just level them with the floor or square them off to the frame. Probably measure top of the bracket, middle of the bracket, just go the 2 inches like I wanted to. Tack them in place and then keep picking along. This metal is extra thick, probably a little bit too much for my 140 meg, but we're gonna get a little hot, get the water out of it, get the moisture out of it, get it tacked in place, and hopefully we'll get decent penetration. Get that water out of there. Got this guy over here in here because he won't stop barking in the house. Little prick. What's up, Ralph? Radius rods are tacked in place, so my booger welds, per usual, should be enough to penetrate, at least to hold its weight for a little while to roll it around. So next is, probably, depending on what time it is, I think it's 8. Not sure what time Home Depot is open till. I'm in a little bit of a pickle here. For the cross member, I want to build a crossbar to hold the shock mounts, which these bad Larrys just came in, and I need to get some bolts for these as well. But those just came in. I need to essentially put the shock mounts to the bottom of the ass end there, and then I need a crossbar that holds the shocks so I can adjust the ride height. Ralph, what are you doing? Probably you just fall over. Hang on. There you go. Back legs are a little weak. He's getting old. We gotta give him a hand sometimes. Back to this. I need to get a bracket or a piece of metal essentially to make a bracket. Now I have this heavy stuff here, which is absolute overkill. I have this round piece of, it's probably like 1/4-inch pipe, which could work. It means I'd have to cut these at like an angle or round amount to make a mount to the pipe and then weld it across. But I was thinking about a piece of angle iron, flat and up, and then mount them to the back. That way, depending on where this falls in the back, I don't think I'm gonna have a ton of height, but if I ran a piece of angle iron, like a 2-inch piece of 3/16 angle iron up or something, I could always do one in the front too, and essentially that could be the bracket to mount my fuel tank. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, but I got a bunch of scrap stuff. Those aren't long enough, they're short by 1 inch, but I do have this piece of, like I said, this piece of pipe here. And then I might have some angle iron in there. I'm not sure, but we'll see what I can come up with to make a cross brace for shock mounts. I mean, I guess I could make the shock mounts that come out like, you know, your fist and whatnot, but I feel like a whole bar welded to it would be a lot better. Well, I'm an idiot. Don't do what I did. Don't put your frame down. Completely forgot. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Pinion angles at ride height. So I'm off by like 2 degrees. Granted, I could probably adjust it, but I only tacked it in with some booger welds. So I'm gonna grind those off and get it re-tacked up again. See, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go. Clicked me, I'm like, oh crap. I should have did that at ride height, where the frame's probably gonna be. And guess what? Way off. Samsonite. So way off. So, let's grind them damn booger welds off and, I don't know, keep plucking away. Ralph and I are leaving Home Depot. I didn't have that piece of angle iron to make the shock mounts, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna get those mocked up so I can get the ride height. I don't even know what the hell I was thinking. I literally, my brain was elsewhere and I screwed the whole thing up, but I got the rear end out of the car and I'm gonna cut the radius rods back up and back off, I should say, and clean them up really good. And we'll do a bunch of measuring all over again. I'm an absolute moron. But that's learning, I guess, right? Back in the shop now. I got some shock mount bolts. I got some angle iron outside I'm gonna bring in real quick that I bought to weld to make the top of the shock mounts. I'm gonna cut these welds off of this rear end because I'm a complete idiot. I really don't know what I was thinking. I had the frame down. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna weld it here, but no, you gotta do it at ride height. I don't even know why I did it. I don't know what I was thinking, but that's how it goes. So I think we're gonna end this video off here. We'll start fresh tomorrow and start next. So I'm a complete idiot. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.